Well, I'm super excited to be here, to have part two of what I think is going to be should continue to be an ongoing conversation for us around racism, social injustice, what our experiences are. Super proud of this diverse circle of people that no two people here look alike, you know. Some of us close, but not all the way. David made the weight distinction between he and I last time, so I'm glad that was part of the conversation. Appreciate that. I think it's super important that as these conversations continue to happen, that the circles that they happen in continue to be diverse. And I think it's so important that we continue to have these conversations because we're all smart enough to know that one conversation did not change the trajectory of our culture. And so until dialogue becomes a regular part of what we're doing, real change will not be sustainable. So I'm super happy to be here with this awesome group of people, man, and just to have a conversation for a few minutes to continue to hopefully enlighten some people, to hopefully encourage some people, and overall to help advance our culture. So I know John's got a bunch of questions he's gonna jump around in. I don't want anybody to sit back and be quiet, man. Let's all lean in and really contribute to what's happening.
Yeah, so first question, we could answer this in a number of different ways. It probably hits people on just all different spectrums of their emotions, but 2020, it's been happening. And what do you think will be your most memorable part of the year 2020 so far? It's halfway over. What will you remember for sure, no matter what?
Something I remember is definitely like you had said, like the diversity when it comes to unity in our country, and how like the protests that we've been having is not just Black people, but it's white people, it's Hispanics, it's everybody, because they're starting to see that what's so important is that our country's unified no matter what situation it is, you know? So definitely looking at this year, halfway over with, is seeing how much unity and power and unity there is.
Yeah.
2020 is a year we're going to look back and say we were part of history. We're part of this point in history. And it seems bad, like, you know, COVID and racism. I mean, those kind of things have always existed. Disease and racism has always existed.
Yeah.
But we get to be part of the change. And like, I think it's going to be really cool to see what we tell our friends and our children one day of how we played a part in this.
I think one of the biggest parts of 2020 that I'm going to remember is just kind of on a negative note, but just fear. I think fear has kind of been like a theme of this year. But, you know, like, I think the two sides of it that I want to remember is how fear can drive people apart, and how we've seen that in 2020, how fear has like divided people and caused lines to be drawn, but fear has also brought unity, and how fear can go either way. It can really be a two-edged sword.
Yeah.
Wow, so good.
I think one of the most memorable moments for me in 2020 is the first time, and it happened when Pastor Stephen and Pastor John Gray had the conversation. Right after that, I typed in the words "Black Lives Matter" for the first time in social media.
Wow.
First time. The reason why that matters so much to me is because I've worked at places before that I got reprimanded and in trouble and was told to delete things. And it was just this really proud moment. And even though it was just social media, you know, it was a very vindicating moment, thinking of friends that I have. And I'm like, I'm gonna remember that moment, you know, because we're a part, you know, our pastor took a courageous step, and a lot of people took a courageous step. And to be in a place where I could say that, it was a very powerful moment for me. Yeah.
Kind of even just looking back at the past couple of years, I think we're always trying to find life in a balance, right? And so remember a couple of years ago where the norm was just work yourself to the bone, because like just not sleeping and overworking, like that's the norm. And now it's like yoga, and if you don't get foot massages, then it's, for sure, self-care is a thing. And what we're all trying to work towards is the middle, right? We all know that's the healthy part, it's the balance. But in order for us to get to a healthy spot, a pendulum needs to be swung. And it needs to be swung really like wide. And I feel like that's what 2020 has been, where I felt like genuinely the Lord swung the pendulum so far out that no one is going to be able to say, I did not know that God was moving. So whatever it is that we've been experiencing, whether it's racial injustice, COVID, whatever, Kobe, you know, whatever it is, we've just experienced so many things where everybody has been so aware that God is definitely trying to grab our attention, and he had to swing the pendulum so far out that now we're trying to work towards what is normal again, which seems like such a silly question to be asking when most of us have existed for a number of years now, but we're asking ourselves like, is this normal? Is it normal for me to think about another person that way? Is it normal to think about race that way? Is it just what's normal? You know, whether you're black, white, doesn't matter. We're all just wondering, like, am I normal? Like, where does this all come from? And so I'm just super grateful that this has been a defining year for us just to relook what normal is. Because when Pastor preached about we're not going back to normal, we all thought that was a response to COVID sermon. But it was really a prophetic sermon of what it is that God will be doing throughout the rest of this year. And so we're just living in the fruit of that. And this conversation, I think, has been ignited by just us questioning, like, what's the balance, what's normal?
You know, when you observe the conversation, even just looking through social media through a lens and thinking of like conversations that I know I have, there's a lot of white people who are beginning to say, can we be done talking about this now? You know? And I can't even begin to think of what that would feel like, being someone who's lived with racism being an everyday reality. And I think right now, at least in our church, there is a little bit of hope and feels like some momentum, like we're getting somewhere. But this has been going on for a really long time and probably is going to continue to be a fight. How have you really moved forward with injustice being a part of everyday life? Like, how have you kept faith? Like, what have been some of the things you've done to keep moving and coping, or trying to move beyond coping?
I think something like I was actually reading something this morning, and like it was something that really reminded me is that the Lord's faithfulness is not predicated on our unfaithfulness, you know, and our flaws and our mistakes. His faithfulness is going to stay continued no matter what situation we go through. So it's like what you just said about faith is like, okay, Lord, like this situation I'm in right now as a black young man, you know, I walk out every day feeling a certain way, having a certain mindset because it was like who I am and how I carry myself. But like knowing that, hey, your faithfulness is not predicated on what my friends say to me or how I feel, you know? So just a reminder of that.
That's really good, Kim.
And there's an imbalance, right? Like, as a white person, at the most, what you're responsible for is continuing the conversation. As a black person, I experience, so like, what it is. And so it's like, for sure, I hear people saying they're tired. I can feel like people are tired, but the difference between being tired of talking about something versus being tired of experiencing it is just like chalk and cheese, you know, it's so different. And I mean, he doesn't have a choice, because at the very least, like, I just want to know that you care. And so that's what we're seeing too.
I think the difference though in talking about it and experiencing it is that if my responsibility is just to talk about it, I get to choose when that ends. Right? But every single time I leave my house, whether I like it or not, my experience continues, right? And so that to me is the difference, which is why I think it's so important that we continue to have these conversations, because it is the birthing place of what I believe is the most important healing solvent for this, and that's empathy, right? I believe most importantly to continue to put yourself in a position where you're continuing to feel the experiences of other people is really the best way to move forward, to help yourself and your circle move forward, because my experience is never going to end. Whether this progresses 1,000 yards or this only moves an inch, my experience will never end, whether you're sick of talking about it or not. I'm black forever.
That should be a big takeaway. 'Cause like I said last time to David, it's like now there's a spotlight that's being shown on what's happening, so like you can't ignore it.
Right.
So that's like your first wake up moment, your first aha moment. And then if it is like now you're saying you're hearing people say they're tired of talking about it, that shouldn't be, like that should be your second aha moment of exactly what you just said. Because then it's a choice if you want to stop talking about it. But it's never, you're right, it's never going to be a choice for you.
Right.
So that should be the second, oh wow. It should be like filling your car up with gas, like let's keep going.
Right. Yeah.
I think for me, what I fear the most of is that it becomes normal. Because when it first happened, there was outrage. And the second time it happened, there was, are you kidding me again? But we've seen this happen multiple times since everyone got woke.
Right.
And my fear is this will become another thing that we just scroll past.
Right.
Because it just becomes a part of everyday life. And so I'm trying to figure out how best to navigate the storm of this is my reality, even when you don't want to see it. You know what I mean? because a lot of the things people are like, hey, like, can we just get back to just talking about life? It's like, no, this is life.
This is my life.
You know?
That's great.
And so, but now the hard thing about that is, how do people not just think that, okay, now this is normal because we're just seeing it every single day? And I don't have the right answer for that. But what I do know is I'm not gonna shy away from posting about it, because at first that was something that I struggled with. If I post about it, man, are people gonna be like, that's just the isolated incident, David? I mean, come on, bro. But but now to just see everyone continually just posting stuff, it's good. But the problem becomes is now if we just start to think, oh yeah, people are just gonna post about it because it's a part of normal. It's like the normal reality that we're kind of living through, and so I don't have the right answer to that. But something that I've been really just trying to work through is educating myself on what the next step is that I can take. Because at first it was just like, I'm just posting. Look, everyone, I'm making you aware. But now I figured out, no, there's some stuff that I can sign up to be a part of. That there's places that I can put my time into. There's companies that I can help put my money into. There's changes that I can be a part of in a very minimalistic way, because I'll be honest, I don't have the ability to vote for change, but there's people in the country who can, and maybe my role is to help educate them by what I put out, and not just sit on the sidelines and say this is someone else's fight. It's like, no, like we all have a role that we can play in making sure that this doesn't become the normal thing that we all start scrolling past on our feeds.
That's great, man.
That's great, David, because I've been working from a mindset of influence meeting authority. And you may not have the ability to vote, but you do have influence. We all do.
Come on.
And change happens when influence intersects with authority.
That's great.
That's when you see things catastrophically move forward in our country and nation, because we all love Martin Luther King, and we uphold him as a figure that says, man, he did so much change, but we have to really evaluate what he really did. He illuminated the things that were in the dark.
Sure.
So that the men in power could actually make the changes. And I feel like our job, as we continue this conversation, just keep shining the light. Matthew 5:14, we are the light of the world. That's our responsibility. But then God, who has supreme authority, will turn the hearts of those that are in the power of position slowly. And you see that, that's the hope I have. You know, that God can continue to use our influence.
One way that I think people can move beyond posting, this is something that has been happening in my family, is having conversations with people in our family.
That's great.
That's great.
And it's been tense and tough, and not like, and I've always found, I'm like, if this is the worst of racism that I have to experience, then I'm blessed. But it's in the moments where I'm wondering, what do I do and who do I support? At the end of the day, we can all probably think of somebody that is in our life that we've heard say something. Might be a grandma, might be an uncle, might be a sister, friend, teammate. And we have the opportunity to speak up and say kind of like, hey, like, what did you mean by that? Or can I talk to you about that? And I wonder, like, has anyone had the opportunity, maybe without putting someone specifically on blast, but the opportunity at them right now. You know,
At my cousin John.
But has anyone had the opportunity to confront on a personal, relational, maybe even family level, someone who has been espousing racist ideas or even the subtle racism?
I got some friends right now, and I do call them my white friends, you know, they're my people. And I love them with all my heart, and we have a really, really great relationship, but they've been giving me a window of showing how they've been going back a generation. So normally they're having conversations with their fathers and with their grandparents. And the confidence that they have to step into is knowing that I support them. Like they have my back, I have theirs. And it's giving me so much like, man, that is the most powerful thing we can influence, the people that we already are connected to from a heart level.
I think for me, I like how you're talking about like position. You know, sometimes like something that I've struggled with is like man, like what role do I play? Because like I'm just a 17-year-old like white girl, like what can I do? But the thing is like I have so much more influence than I think, because I can talk to people around me, I can talk to my friends, and like what you said, go back a generation. Like it's so simple for me to have a conversation with a grandparent, have a conversation with an aunt, and again, like you said, like if that's the worst that I have to go through, then like that's easy for me. That's just a conversation, and then that opens doors for them to talk to their friends, and it just circles through. And I like what you talked about earlier with sympathy. That's another thing I've been working through is like, or you talked about empathy. So I'm trying to like learn the difference between sympathy and empathy. Because like, you know, as a white person, I can say like, oh, I have sympathy. I feel bad for you. I'm sorry. But the reality is like, that doesn't make any changes. That's not going to help any of my friends. That doesn't bring change into the world. But empathy is like that next step of, no, let me put myself in their shoes. Like, how would that make me feel? And that's what really drives me to action. And so it's just the difference between sympathy and empathy, I think, is so important.
I do want to combat the inaccurate information that you don't have a lot of influence. That isn't true. You do, right? And I don't mean that as a youth pastor. That's the thing I'm supposed to say. I mean that because it's the truth, right? I think one of the greatest stimulants for change is going to be the people who do have influence, like yourself, illuminating, to his point, what has been happening in the dark. It's one thing for the people in the dark to shout from the dark, something needs to change, but it's something different for someone like yourself. You might be thinking, I'm a 17-year-old white girl, but from as a 30-year-old black man, I'm looking and saying, this system is built for you.
Wow.
This entire system, this entire thing is set up for you to thrive, for you to take light into the darkness. Makes you the most influential person sitting in this circle right now. And I don't want you to go to college thinking, I mean, the least I can do is have, no. You have the power to really make some significant change, a lot faster than even I do, and you're half my age.
There's this, in Genesis, there's a scripture where we see like one of the first things that the Lord ever did, and it was separating light from the darkness. And in Genesis, he calls lightness like light, day, and darkness, night. But it's so interesting that in the New Testament, light has a new name, and you were referencing it, and he calls light you. You are the light of the world. He does no longer need to reference day as light, it's you. And so if you're wondering who's the light, it's you. You're it, you know? And so it's so crazy for me to like be thinking about how do we tackle this? And it's by being the light. And one of the things that you said is like, how have you been navigating like subtle racism? And I think for me, I've just had to be like, there's no such thing. You know, what kills you? A spoon of poison or the bottle? Both. You know, like both will take you out. And so just realizing that in our families, in our like workspaces, in our friendships, calling it what it is. Like that's not subtle, that's not a little bit of racism, that's not a little bit of poison. That's something that over time, is gonna grow into something that could literally be the knee on someone's neck. And so I wanna help you not ever be caught in a position where you're taking away from someone's experience or someone's life. And I think we're all responsible for that. So be thinking like, end in mind. Like, I don't ever want a white person to find themselves being quoted saying the wrong thing or finding themselves putting another black person in danger, ever. And I'm gonna do whatever it takes for me to just come out of my comfort zone and say, that's racist.
That's great. I think that part of why racism is so difficult is not only it's long-standing, but it's like ravaging to communities, and I mean it has like far-reaching effects and pain and generations of pain and disadvantage, real disadvantage. I was talking to my father, and he was talking to me about advantages that we know historically that his father got that black men at that time coming out of World War II did not, which allowed him to become an engineer and my father to become a psychologist. And I think there's just these things that people don't realize. They're very deep-seated. And trying my best to put on some level of empathy, that would make me incredibly angry and hurt, and any element of racism would. And I guess what I think our world could use is maybe some pointers, some help knowing how do you maintain a phase of not just getting bitter and angry at the world, and or what even is the proper way to get angry. I think that's even something that people are asking is, how do people get angry in the right way without becoming bitter or overarchingly destructive?
Yeah, for me personally, as I journey through layers and levels of racism, one thing that always sticks out to me is that when I was one of the only African American leaders in an organization, and I was experiencing the rage or the anger and the pain of a situation with my then leader and pastor in my life, what really truly helped me, number one, was perspective.
Wow, that's great.
Seeing things not from where I was, but where they used to be and where they could be.
Yeah.
And so even at my lowest moment, even in this season, I got on the phone with my grandma, and y'all gotta meet my grandma, Mama Price.
Mama Price.
She'll play no games. Mama Price got on the phone, cause I was like, Grandma, I don't wanna go to work. You know, I don't wanna step back into this fight. And she said, son, if you don't get your bougie self in that Nissan Sentra.
Right, and drive.
And drive, cause I had to walk.
To walk.
The perspective in that moment is that we're so much further than we've ever been. This is 2020, not 1920.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's great.
And the thing that we are facing now, yes, it is difficult. We don't want to minimize it, but we want to understand it fully. And to see it at a clearer picture, the perspective we need is that we've come so far. We're more unified than ever. And now this gives us a little bit of energy, which is so important, to rest and to have the right people around you that energize you and know the ones that de-energize you. Because the second thing you need is patience. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We probably won't see the level of change we want to see in the next 5 to 10 years, guys. That's just reality.
Sure.
But if we do this well enough and we're patient, persistent through this, in 20 to 30 years, in 30 to 50, my son, Grayson, who is 6, and my daughter, Lavender, who is 2, will live in a different America. And if I do not have the patience, I will get frustrated, bitter at my current circumstance. Not understanding that everything I do, if I don't get healing, I will hand it down. Which is the sermon that Pastor Stephen spoke into my life. Going back to that leader, he spoke that into me in Jackson, Tennessee. And it was as if he was talking to me through that computer screen in my office as a youth pastor, looking at me and saying, if you don't get the bitterness out of your heart, you're gonna destroy the destiny God has for you.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's Michael Jackson. You gotta look in the man in the mirror and figure out how to really make a change internally. But understand that it is it's the long play.
You know, kind of bringing this part of the conversation to a close, I feel like the best way for this conversation to keep going for everyone watching, all of us, is really predicated by our relationships. And I think what we're still seeing so much of is people posting information without relationship. And what would you guys say to encourage people to diversify their circles so that they can diversify their thoughts and really like start new friendships and truly bridge that gap into a real relationship with someone that's gonna help them see differently?
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say, and I was actually gonna tie back to something you said earlier about getting out your comfort zone. I think that's really important to creating new relationships with all different types of people. Like, you know, we can't grow if we're just comfortable. That just means we're content when we're comfortable. So I think when we start reaching out to someone like, hey, like, tell me a little bit more about what you're going through so that I can kind of understand more. Like, I think that's really the key to growing, and you know, it just makes us stronger and bolder to really step out and really make a difference in the world. So
I had a white friend of mine reach out to me in a conversation we were having not too long ago, back in February, around the Black History piece that we did as a church. And a friend of mine asked me, the lady was wonderful. I don't know if y'all remember the piece we did. She was incredible. And she made the statement, we built this country, speaking as Black people. And he was like, I don't get that. Right. I think one of the most important questions Black or white people could be asking is, instead of attacking you for what you said, it is, I don't understand that. Right? Especially if this is a person that I'm friends with. Right? I have to go into these conversations believing the best in you. So that I'm not attacking your character, I'm not attacking you personally, but what I'm asking you to do is then clarify for me so that I have an understanding. Because in all the getting I get, that scripture remains, I want to get an understanding of what you're saying, because I might attack you when really the thought you had, you caught. when if I ask you the question the right way, I get some clarity. You will then turn around and go home and have a conversation a generation back. And our friendship doesn't have to be sabotaged because of it, right? So to your point, it really is not just the clarity of like, what has it been like, but where did that come from? What experience led you to say something like that?
And to also hear the question with grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the one thing I'm trying to get better at. Because I think a lot of the times when I'll be honest, on social media, getting responses or comments for stuff that we post, our knee reaction is, are you kidding me?
Right.
You're gonna ask me this? Right. That's me. I'm like, are you blind? Have you not been watching the news? Like, do you live under a rock? Who are you?
Right.
But it's actually going, wait, can I look at the comment, at the question from a place of wanting to give grace? Yeah. And I think when that changes, then we can start to have the other person, the other party, open up to receive an answer. Because when we're also coming from a position of offense or defense, all that does is just create a place for them that they just want to suck back in and just be like, well, I don't even want to ask the question anymore. And so it's us also getting the right understanding of, let me just be gracious enough to see past the comment and to see what they're trying to ask and not get so nitpicky with the way they phrase the question.
Right. I think as a white person, something that's very simple that you can ask is, what don't I see? Because that helps say, I know that I'm blind to certain things because of the color of my skin. Yeah. What do you see and experience that I would never? Help me see what I cannot see. And that could at least open a conversation without you feeling awkward about asking something direct. You can ask, help me see things that I cannot see.
That's great.
A question for me came up a couple of weeks ago about like, who do I consider to be like one of my pastors here at Elevation? And I said, Chetwin Pete. And they're like, oh, but he's not.
You just a round of applause for Chet. He's gonna be so mad I did that.
No, I mean, but the reason why I love him so much is because he loves me for no reason. Yeah. And so I never have to question sincerity. And I think when we're talking about race and we're talking about how do I, as a white person, help black people, if it's only coming from a place of strategy, I just want to make sure I don't post the wrong thing, I just want to make sure I don't say the same, like that's strategy. And if it's not met with sincerity, then people don't actually feel cared for. Yeah. And so if you're just reaching out to me so that I fact check your post, I don't care. Like, post whatever you want, get in trouble, you know. I'm saying it has to come from a place of sincerity. Sincerity has to be met with strategy. If I'm gonna be in your circle to be your one black friend, that's strategy. It's not sincerity. If I'm gonna be in your life just so that you can, I don't know, not get people attacking you in your Instagram comment section, like that's strategy. And I think a lot of us have been feeling so tired because we're seeing the strategy side of life and not the sincerity. And so like, I wanna be in your life, I want to be a part of what you're doing, not just from a strategy standpoint, but from a sincerity standpoint. I'm in this conversation because I have something sincere to bring. That's the first reason why I should be here. The second reason should be, strategically, it doesn't make sense for you, John Rush, to have a team of white people in this conversation. That's bad strategy. But if those two things don't meet, and it's just one or the other, then we're not moving anything forward. And so I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful you're here. Because it speaks to the strategy side too, and the sincerity.
Drop the mic.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and I have learned something from each and every single one of you in this conversation and before this conversation. And I hope that everyone watching this video realizes that they are now responsible. Sure. They have no excuse to not move forward in some kind of actionable step to fight racial injustice, to better themselves. And I'm looking around, and every single one of us could keep talking for a long time. And the reality is that after this YouTube episode, we need to realize there's a YouTube episode in everybody, and then some. And that it might be socially awkward or scary to start a conversation, but we're gonna have grace in our hearts, we're gonna ask good questions, we're gonna come from a place from sincerity. And I think that when we do that, when this video ends, that's how the world gets better. So I love each and every single one of you. I'm honored to be in this conversation with y'all.
Thank you, brother. Love y'all.
We believe in the youth.
Hey, did you like that video?
I did. What is your favorite part, Tim?
The middle.
Oh, of course, that was my favorite part too.
Absolutely.
For more content just like this,
Yep.
make sure you like, subscribe, and comment your favorite video below.